All right, I'm going to show you all how I prepare my espresso pucks. I thought this would be a very useful video since I'm actually in the process of filming a video about these bad WDT tools, these things with these hooks, and they're bad distribution tools. But the thing is these suck. Use these instead. So what my combination of espresso puck prep tools are really two things. I use a tamper. Tamper I use is this happy tamper here, and then I use a 9-prong WDT tool, and then for my levers I use the loudly tamper, and then sometimes I use the decent tamper. Thing is I only just WDT and tamp. I don't use spinny tools. I will probably talk about spinny tools in the future, but that's a fight I don't really feel like picking right now. But let me kind of show you all the variations of this, then I think it'll be very helpful because people are saying like, well, if I use say a smaller basket, like a 49mm basket, if I use different types of funnels, if I use different types of roast levels, what do I do in every single one of those situations? AKA, if my grounds are a little bit tall, when I take the funnel off, there's maybe a ring that gets created, or different scenarios like that, or maybe the grounds are too tall because of the roast level, you know, if you use a darker roast like this one. But let me kind of show you a worst case scenario, or really like if you have a clumpy grinder, and this is exactly what these tools do, is they create clumps. So as you notice here, they are literally creating clumps because these little rings act like shovels. So anyway, here it is. So this here is a 18-gram basket, 58mm portafilter, and this is a fairly tall funnel that, if I take off, has a ring. So I'll show you my WDT process, and I'll show you how to solve for that ring that gets created. So I take my 9-prong tool, and what I do is I get in there and I rake the bottom of the basket. I'm okay with scraping the basket and raking the basket because I want to break up those clumps. And in fact, I don't really think you'd ever be able to tell the difference between a scratch basket and a non-scratch basket. But anyway, let's go in here. So my tool is at the very end there, and I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this, but I'm going in there and I'm raking. And what I like to do is I like to do an initial bottom rake where I go fast, and I can go fast and I can really do anything because of the funnel here. But what I do is I go in here and I rake in circular motions, and I go kind of throughout here. So I'm kind of only going from here, then the middle, then the bottom. So top, circle, 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 circle. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to distribute the bottom and break up most of the more egregious clumps, especially if you have a grinder that creates a lot of clumps that got into the basket initially. So I do this. This helps break up most of the clumps. And then what I do is I repeat the same exact pattern, but I gradually lift up. So I'm sort of really just gradually lifting up there. So I'm just kind of doing the same motion, but throughout from bottom to top. And then at the end, I give it a vertical slam to really close the air pockets. So most of the time that solves for kind of a ring, but sometimes you will end up with a ring. You might be able to barely see that there is a ring on the edge over there. What I do is I repeat the same exact motion as I do throughout the puck with the funnel on, but I just do it on the top, just on the surface level, and then I give a slight vertical slam at the end of that. So I go here, and I go back. You can actually go in any direction you want. You can go back here, and the entire point here is to just do a light rake on the top here. Kind of hard to do behind the camera, but then I give it a slam, and it might be a little bit hard to see there, but pretty much there is no big ring created. And then what I do is I just tamp. But if you really want to be safe, what you can do is you can get very, very close. So like, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this here, but the edge of my WDT is like definitely against the wall of the basket there. I messed up the level here, but what I have to do is I just have to redistribute the top of the grounds. And I'm really getting in there to the edge where I'm just lightly touching the side here with the needles, and that allows me to fill in the gap that you'll see with certain funnels. And this is very helpful too with some of these darker roast coffees. And then I give it like multiple slams. That really helps level things, and pretty much this is good to tamp. This specific issue won't happen as much with these styles of funnels where they really sit in here and they don't stick into the basket. Now let's cover a situation where we use smaller baskets. So here is a 49 millimeter basket. I'm just going to intentionally create clumps. By the way, if you have something like the niche and you do these dosing cup transfers, you'll end up creating a ton of clumps. Okay, so I've actually put in 15 grams here into this smaller 49 millimeter basket, and I've used a dark roast to kind of simulate really the most terrible situation where you have way too much coffee. You have coffee that is definitely more voluminous because of the roast level, as well as you have clumps created because, say, you used a dosing funnel or you have a really clumpy grinder. So what I do with these is I still repeat the same exact pattern that I did for the larger basket or the 58 millimeter basket. Here we go. I'm getting in here and I'm doing the same raking pattern as before. And then I just go in here, and then I'm just going to go up, do the same exact thing. Now here is what's going to happen here. So this is a 14 gram basket. I've put in 15 grams in here, and I've used a thicker, I've used a darker roast coffee. So here's kind of the worst case scenario here. We have a darker roast coffee, we have overdosed, and things are going to go way above the funnel here. So what you can try to do to mitigate all of this before you do a final raking on the top, and you could actually even do the final raking here to ensure things are level, is give this as many vertical slams as you can to really collapse the air pockets. So as you see there, the actual results are not too bad, but there still is a sort of gap here. That was great because we actually were able to get the grounds below the edge of the basket. However, there's a little bit of a gap there because of the funnel we were using, creating a little bit of a gap there. So all we have to do is we just repeat the same exact thing as before. Is we kind of get in, touch the edge, just barely. And then we can level the top, and we do really careful top leveling. And then we can give ourselves a vertical slam. Depending on kind of what side you slam on or how fast you slam on, and if your leveling isn't proper, like this here, could be done a little bit better. So what I can do is I can just go in and ensure that one side has more coffee than the other. So that was an example where when I vertical slammed, I ended up with a slightly more level side, or a slightly taller side on one side than the other. So all I have to do is I really have to just move the side that has more coffee to the side that has less coffee, and then I do a vertical slam there. And this puck, at least looking here, is looking pretty good, where I'm looking at the edges here. And this is, again, overdosed with a dark roast coffee, and I did all those vertical slams to ensure that I could get the coffee lower than the outer edge of the basket so I could actually tamp it. And now the actual bed of grounds up here is much more level than before. So that's kind of how you solve that issue, where you have a ring created because of a funnel like this, and if you're using a really dark roast coffee. Let me show you one more final example of this situation, but in a 58 millimeter basket. So I'm just dumping a ton of coffee there to create a ton of clumps, and then I'm just going to grind some more coffee into here, and I should have about 20 grams. Here is that magnetic dosing funnel that I use that doesn't actually sit into the basket like this one does. So here you can see this is like really not looking good because we're using a dark roast coffee and things are clumpy and things don't look good. So same method as before, what I will do is I will get in here, stick this thing, stab the bed of grounds, get in here. I go in to out here, really get in there. And as you notice here with some funnels, you might have a ring of grounds on the edges. What you can do is you can take your WDT, get in there, and just kind of scrape the edges in there. So we're getting all the grounds that are over here into the puck. But anyway, we can go back in here, really ensure that the bed of grounds on the bottom is actually even. Now we're done scraping the bottom. Let's kind of lift up, repeat the same exact motion. And there we go. So I'm also going around there just to ensure that this is as level as possible. And then what I can do is I can vertical slam this. So as you see, there's some holes obviously created because of this, but we'll fix that. But again, this is 20 grams in this darker roast coffee, and we're using a funnel that doesn't really stick in there. So what is happening though is when you lift up, sometimes even these funnels that don't really stick in so much, they still create a little bit of a ring, but not as egregious of a ring as something like these. So all you have to do is, what you can do is, one, you could actually just slam it out, but I like to do a combination of slamming and also just doing some brief top level raking to ensure that everything is nice and even. And you can get away with doing a bunch of slams if you're overdosing, like this example here. So probably shouldn't do that, but there you go. So that is kind of how, and you can also, I could actually go even crazier with how I level like the center part here, but really that's how you get rid of that ring on the edge. And I'm also just totally overdosing here with a dark roast coffee that is way bigger. I definitely could actually level this side a little bit better. So again, if you have one side that's more uneven than the other, what you could do is you could take the grounds from the taller side and move it to the shorter side. And that's what I'm going to do there. It's a bit hard to see in this example because I'm just super overdosing this basket, and we have way more volume because of the darker roast coffee. Doing this method of slamming and also WDTing allows me to really ensure that the bed is as level as possible, and I get rid of all the potential gaps that are created because of different funnel styles. But I pretty much do this, and then all I do is I then tamp it. And then boom, done. But this is a decent tamper. So yeah, very straightforward process there, and that's kind of what I do every single time. That's how I prep my pucks. Seems to work, but really I use a lot of other tools like pre-infusion and puck screens and all of that stuff to ensure I get as even of an extraction as possible anyway. But it really starts with doing good puck prep and using a tool like this with these smaller 0.4 mil or even smaller, even thinner than 0.4 mil needles. This will really allow you to have a great experience when you prep your puck. But as long as you use a consistent technique, you will definitely get really good results as long as you have a tool that actually works. But yeah, that's all I want to show you. Thanks for spending time watching the video. I'll see you around.